that's essentially what they're saying. Like, remember this aspect of your culture being these peaceful, like agricultural society.
Right.
And then, like, all of that was lost when the split happens and we see the Tuatha become nomadic. They can no longer grow. They don't have that opportunity because they're always on the move. So it's like, remember where you came from. And yeah, I really, really loved it.
Yeah, I really.
If you would like to help support the channel, check out Road to Tarvalon on Patreon and YouTube memberships. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Amber here with Laura, and we are on episode 4, season 3, The Wheel of Time. Laura, how do you feel about this
There's
one?
so much to talk about in this episode.
Yeah, I want to preface this, like what I'm about to say, with something. I am someone who has enjoyed the books for a very long time. I'm not always going to love certain changes when things are adapted from books to show, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this might be one of my favorite episodes of fantasy and sci-fi that I've ever seen. It's so much, and it's such a nice blend of that science fiction and fantasy that make the Wheel of Time books what they are, and I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it.
So, there were some things that I wanted to like kind of talk about before we really get into the episode.
Yeah, let's go there.
So, let's talk about the Karakarn prophecy because some of it's really straightforward when they say of the blood but not raised by the blood. That's very straightforward, but some of it is not, like take them away and destroy them. That kind of thing. Is that meaning like that he will take them away from their home, destroy their culture and way of life? And another question, like, aren't they now obligated to be the people of the dragon?
Well, okay, the first question about destroying them. The show hasn't touched on that yet, and if I tell you, I feel like it might spoil
Okay, okay.
something for you. I'm pretty sure we will get resolution to that by the end of this season, at least if we're going by the book timeline. And then the second question was
Aren't they now obligated to be the people of the dragon?
yes and no. They kind of always were the people of the dragon. Like, this prophecy is always something that's been a part of their society, or at least like their current society, but he still has to win them over,
Right, right.
I guess. In a previous episode, we were saying, he's got to do something. He can't just waltz in and be like, hey guys, I'm here, the dragon, follow me. Like,
Right.
he's going to have to do something to earn it. And
Rhuidean is not it.
it's a
It's a
part.
part of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what would you want to talk about first from this episode?
I think there's some things leading up to the actual events inside that were really important, even if it's just it some moments kind of felt like I know it's not filler, but if you're not really like sure what's going to happen, it's like, "Oh, why did they include that?" I want to touch on Aviendha having to give up the cotton sore. So she's taking her clothes off and handing over her spears, and the wise ones are telling her, "You can't run from this. You are to become a wise one." And she's saying, "No, no, no. Like, I'm a fighter. I want to be a maiden of the spear." And they're telling her, you can't run from what you must be. And this question of duty and obligation, I feel like, is such a theme hanging over this episode, especially when it comes in terms of, Avienda. What about Rand? What's his duty? What's his obligation? Last episode, we saw Lan talking to Melindra about his duties and obligations. And we've also got people like Egwene, where she wanted to be a wisdom at first. Then she wants to be an Aes Sedai. Now she's hanging out with the wise ones, training to become a dreamwalker. Like, where does her duty and obligations lie? Does it lie with Rand, or is it something else, something bigger? And so those few lines in this little scene, I think, meant a lot. And then also the lead up to that of with Avienda and Lan having this fight, I thought was really cool because Lan is probably one of the best swordsmen in the entire series. And so him going toe to toe with Aviendha was a really fun way to show not only does Aviendha want to remain a fighter, she's also incredibly dangerous and incredibly talented at it. So her giving that up is just this huge deal. It's like a really important storyline for her.
Yeah,
So where does that leave her?
yeah, and I can respect that Avienda probably saw these as her last moments as a Maiden of the Spear. She knew that they
Yeah.
were coming for her, and I don't really blame her for spending it doing something she loves.
Yeah, and now it makes sense why she was like, who told them we were coming? You know, like
Yeah, I couldn't
she'd been
understand.
on the run,
Yeah, I
so
didn't understand why she was so angry about that. So, like, what was her plan? To just drop Rand near where he needed to be and be
maybe.
like, okay, you guys take it from here. I'll catch you later.
Yeah. And there was a lot of like very subtle humor in this episode as well. I thought it was really funny when they pull up to Rhuidean, right? And then they're greeted by the Shido. And it's this whole big scene where Savannah is like, it's Savannah and Couladin and Rand is there, and they're like, he's a wetlander. He shouldn't be here. Like, you're sullying this place with your presence. And I thought that was really fun. Also, I loved how after that it's this whole big thing, but then Rand is like, I asked to enter, and they're like, yes, we allow it. The wise ones are like, yeah, sure. And Moraine is like, I also would like to enter, and they're like, yes, we allow it. And Aviendha is like, I too will enter, and they're like, yes, we will allow it. And Egwene is like, I would like to enter, and they're like, no. that's that's not your story, Egwene. Sit down. Like you've got enough going on. But I love how like Egwene, she can't be left out. It's just such a part of her character.
It's interesting to me because, like, he and Egwene are continually shown that their paths do not align. Even in this episode, like, Bear says it to her, like, your paths don't align. And you're right, Egwene
Correct.
hates being left out. But when we look at, like, what's happening with Rand and Moraine, their relationship is really tense leading up to this point. There's a lot of like extenuating circumstances to everything going on. It isn't just as cut and dry as like, are you lying? Yes or no. But
Yeah.
Rand wants to make it that simple because he wants straightforward answers. And you can't blame him. And I see both parties' perspectives here. But I do think that like her giving him a little space right now might have been helpful.
Yeah, I definitely see
And
that.
her response to him when he was like, say it plain, and she was like, I'll do nothing that'll like, and she comes up with this like very calculated way to say it, and I can't blame Rand for being rightfully exasperated by her response. And she's been helicoptering.
Yeah.
She's not just like protecting him, she's helicoptering, and she's doing it without hiding that like she I guess thinks that he's going to go crazy or off the deep end already. She's jealous of his relationship with Lan right now. And there's just a lot going on in that relationship. So when he was like, I want to go to Rhuidean, and then she turns around and does the same thing, I would have been like, girl, give me just a little bit of space here.
Yeah. And I think it's really nicely done. This is a huge aspect of the books where there's this constant divide between Rand and Moraine because if we go all the way back to when Moraine was an accepted in the tower and a young Aes Sedai, when she learns about the dragon being reborn, when she learns of this prophecy, there's a very small handful of people who also know about this. So, what happens is she sees all of these other people die. You know, we don't know if it's Forsaken or Black Aja or whatever, but she's been watching people drop like flies her entire life as anyone gets close to the Dragon Reborn. And so I think she legitimately feels like since she's been there since day one, she knows more than anyone, but also she's very protective of who knows what. And so I think she just can't fully let go and trust Rand because she's watched so much damage befall all of these people around her just due to him existing.
Right.
All of her decisions, at least a lot of them in the books, are trying to prevent more deaths and more destruction coming from this person being born. And so Rand being like, we're going to go to the Isle Waste, Moraine. You're going to do what I say this time. Her letting go is just so hard.
Yeah, she's a really controlling person. That's pretty evident from the
Yeah.
beginning.
She really can't. She would rather die.
Yeah. And like, there's a lot of her character to like, but that like hyper controlling aspect is one of the things that I think kind of gets in the way for her.
Definitely. It's something that she really has to overcome if she wants to be trusted by Rand. And so I guess the next thing we got to see is when she comes out, what her understanding is of things.
Yeah, there's that. I also like when you combine that she's super controlling with the fact that she has very few people skills, like there can be a lot going on there. But I will say this, like I like the aspect about how the wise ones really command the same kind of respect as the Aes Sedai do.
I think that's a really fun aspect of their culture too, because the world of the Wheel of Time is largely matriarchal society. And, we see it with the Aes Sedai, we see it with Queen Morgase, and now we're seeing it with the Wise Ones. So even these clan chiefs, even these men who lead the Aiel, they have to ask the Wise Ones for permission to enter. Like if they want to become a clan chief, it's up to the Wise Ones to say whether or not you're worthy, you may enter. And it's a really huge aspect of their culture. And so I really enjoyed seeing this showdown between our wise ones of Cold Rock's Hold versus the Shido, and also the new introduction to these characters of Savannah, the Shido Aiel with this big headdress type outfit. I mean, she looked incredible. This is one of the characters I was dying to see what they would look like and how they would costume this character because she's very extravagant. But then also we have Couladin, the other Aiel man that's with her, the one that's not inside Rhuidean. And him just he's a wild man. Like I had a good time with them.
Yeah, their scene really like gave some depth to how the different clans of Aiel engage with one another.
Yeah. It's not monolithic, like even within their society and G and toe and honor and obligation and duty, they're still not a monolithic society, which is pretty cool because it would have been really easy to be like, yes, like all the same things matter to each one of them. Good on Robert Jordan, good on Prime Video.
So when we first get into Ruidian, they come across the Tree of Life.
Yeah, Aviendha.
Yeah, I really felt like the tree's connection to both of them really gives like so much depth to the pattern and the weaving destiny through space and time.
Yes, this was incredibly done. Are we talking about how we go back in time and we learn that Moraine's uncle was the one who cut down the Avendasora that was in Kyrian, which led to the war, which led to the Aiel coming across the Dragon Wall, which led to Rand's birth mother giving birth on the slopes of Dragon Mount, which led to etc. and them saying our paths have always been connected. Loved it.
Yeah, it was incredible, especially like when you think about that there were 10,000 wagons that left with those trees and now there's only one tree. It's the
Yeah.
last,
10,000 cuttings, only one made it out.
yeah, only one survived. So now we can get into like where Rand is at. And if you think about it, he's really in touch with his history as the dragon. He's familiar with Lews Therin. He's familiar with like, at least a little bit of himself as the dragon, but traveling back through the male line of his family gave him a lot of insight to where he came from and how interconnected his and Moraine's paths are. The pattern's been weaving their journeys for a long time since before either of them were born. Like, we see that Rand's family has been a part of so many critical moments building up to fulfill the Karakaran prophecy. Like, just him being the Karakaran, but being a part of the first clan chiefs to face the trials of Rhuidean, being one of the two that created the modern day Aiel in a moment of fear and desperation. Also, we learn that the Tuatha'an come from the original Aiel. Like, the Way of the Leaf is original Aiel.
What was going through your mind when you got there? Like, what were you thinking?
I think that, like, one of my favorite parts of Rand's journey is when we find out he was present for the release of the Dark One, and his family knows the Forgotten Song.
Yeah.
We spent so much time in season 1 hearing about the Forgotten Song.
So I want to say this. The song in the books is never revealed. We never know what that means when they say remember the song.
Oh, okay.
Like we never get a confirmation. So I enjoy that they've built on that and they've, like in their own way, they're like, here, this is the plausible answer. And I think yeah, I always interpreted that as like the song not being an actual song, but just remembering the way of the leaf, remember your culture. But I think this works in the same way because that's essentially what they're saying. Like, remember this aspect of your culture being these peaceful, like agricultural society.
Right.
And then, like, all of that was lost when the split happens and we see the Tuatha'an become nomadic. So, like, they can no longer grow. They don't have that opportunity because they're always on the move. So it's like, remember where you came from. And yeah, I really, really loved it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Rand's traveling back through the male line of his family. His family is so interconnected to everything. It's not just him. It's like every male member going back through time has been present for these really crucial moments of change.
Was there one vision of his within the glass columns that you liked the most?
It would definitely be the final one, like Rat Tail Rand.
Same, same.
We're in the age of legends at this point, or actually kind of before that, right?
Yeah, when we see him take the Sa'angreal, this ball with
Yeah,
him, like as
that's
he's
part of the
leaving.
age of
Yeah.
legends, but then the releasing of the Dark One came before that. I'd say like his little conversation with Landfear and then the releasing of the Dark One was probably my favorite scene.
Same. Those two just really I don't know what exactly it is because those two might not be the most heavy hitting. Like the most I think the most heavy hitting one is when we go back to, I think it's the third viewing that he has when he's Luwin and we see little baby Aviendha and he's in his, Tuathan outfit with the red hair and then the group of bandits have abducted his sister and when he's fighting to get her back, he pretty much kills this bandit. And his mother being like, you are no longer Aiel. You're a stranger. You're an oath breaker. Who are you that calls me mother? Hide your face from me, stranger. I was like sobbing. I was like, oh God, I can't believe I'm watching this. I can't believe I'm finally seeing this. That was so like hard hitting. But going back to these other two, like the last two visions during more towards the Age of Legends time, look, like the visuals are killer. The way that they have set up just the entire look of that, like this like agricultural landscape with like the golden field and then this conversation with Landfear, scientist before she's Landfear at this. It's almost like an institute, but the singing in the fields and everything. And then like when it pans out and you actually see this globe-like structure, the Sharome is what it's called. Like it just looked so cool. It was awesome.
It was. It was also a good way to give Landfear some backstory. Like to
Yeah.
see that she wasn't always what she is now.
Yeah. It kind of makes you wonder, where did we get from point A to point B? Like we see her here and then we know that she eventually becomes a Forsaken. I do kind of mourn not being able to see, the moment she swears her oaths and what that looked like for her, but this is still such a good scene with her.
Yeah, it really is. Especially because it's like back before she became Landfear.
Yeah, and this little scene right here between Rat Tail Rand and Landfear, this doesn't happen in the books. So they're building on the information in a way that just works really well for television.
Our next really like big moments have to do with Moraine. We see her pull the Saangreal from the Tree of Life, but I'm not really like clear on how she knew it was there.
Yeah. So I don't think we're going to get an answer to that. This happens differently in the books. This Saangreal that she takes, this ball, in the books, okay, it's hard to explain. So in the books there's a pair, and they do say there's a pair in the show, but in the books it's called the Choden Call, and it's two giant statues, but there is a male statue and a female statue, but you can't use the statues as the Sa'angreal. You have to use an access key. So there's both, for each side, there's like a key that they use to use it. Now, the show has called these, instead of calling it the Choden Call, they're using the Sarkarnan and Kalendor. So in the show, Moraine finds the Sarkarnan, this ball, and we don't quite know why or how she knew it was there, but we know it's important to her. And I guess we have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Because I don't she doesn't use it in the book, so I'm really curious to know what she's planning with this. I guess we can narrow it down this way. We know it's a Sa Angreal, so essentially it's just going to make her be one of the most powerful channelers, women channelers, if she can use it. So whatever she's planning is probably, depending on that. She's planning to channel something huge. So I don't know what.
Yeah, it would have been nice if they gave a little bit on how she knew it was there.
Yeah.
I mean, unless I guess while she was touching the tree, it communicated that to her, but
You know what? I'm just thinking, since she is an Aes Sedai and we learned that it was like put there by the Aes Sedai, maybe it's just a part of this, Aes Sedai prophecy type stuff
maybe.
where she had a clue. Like last season, she was digging through all of those prophecies at Varen's little Mediterranean retreat cottage. Maybe it's something like that. Like she just read something somewhere and she's has been gathering a lot of data.
Yeah, that's true. So she could have known about it through like before she even got there.
Yeah.
But her journey through the rings was visually stunning.
Ooh, was there any aspect that you really like were drawn to in
I
there?
actually really enjoyed the turning aspect of it,
Okay.
considering it's like tied to like how we always hear turning or turns of the wheel references.
Yeah.
But I couldn't imagine watching myself die thousands of times. It's like everything's got to go well or it's all going wrong.
Yeah, she's about to exit that thing with a head full of trauma and knowledge. I mean, just seeing just the amount of deaths that we had seen her go through in these little flashes were so many. I wrote down all of the scenes. So we see her as the Amerlin killing Rand. We see her releasing Lan's bond, and then we see her bonding Rand. Then we see Landfear setting Lan on fire. We see her as the Amerlin holding a dying Rand. We see her killing Rand with Lan. We see her kneeling to Rand and swearing oaths to him. We see her death by Landfear with all of the other, like Igwe, Nynaeve, Elaine, Perrin, Matt, all of them as Forsaken behind Landfear. We see her having sex with Rand. We see her having sex with Landfear and then getting killed by Landfear and then many more deaths with
Yeah,
Landfear.
just
It's so much in such a short amount of
a million
time.
ways to die by Landfear.
Yeah, that's what this episode should have been called. uh,
Which is interesting considering, they kind of have like their little alliance happening right now. And I can imagine that this will add like a lot of nervousness for Moraine about that.
Definitely. I mean, it seemed like the many deaths by Lanfear was the most clips, like little short scenes that we got where it's like, oh, she's dead. Oh, she's dead again. Oh, now she's getting her throat slit. It's just over and over. So, I mean, if anything, these visions are telling her every option that she sees almost ends with death by Lanfear.
Well, I mean, she is kind of like pressing on Lanfear's obsession, like with Rand. So that makes it considerably more dangerous.
Yeah.
I think for it to change, we would have to go so far back and change Lanfear's relationship with Lews Therin.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way to keep Moraine and Landfear out of each other's spheres because the connecting point between them is the dragon.
Yeah, I'm surprised that we haven't seen Lews Therin yet.
We haven't seen him at all this season.
I think I remember hearing that the actor who played Lews Therin did, he had like a scheduling conflict, but he did appear in this season, whether it be like visually or just his voice, like electronically, like he did something from wherever he was at and wasn't actually maybe like shot, filmed. But I don't know. I'm curious if we're gonna see him. Because when we saw, I'll be 100% honest, when we saw that scene of them in the fields and then it pans to Lanfear, I was not expecting to see Rand. I was expecting to see Lews Therin. And that's one of the reasons why I liked that scene so much because, for one, visually stunning, all of the information there was great, but I was also surprised. So I was
Okay.
like, oh, that's cool. I thought it was just going to be Rat Tail Rand, on the ground cutting the wheat, and then it was going to pan up and it would be Lanfear and Lews Therin talking. And I was like, okay, so this, I mean, that I think works. How we got it works better, probably for me.
Okay. I like that.
I really enjoyed it. I felt like I was constantly getting surprises because a lot of this is a bit more additional than what we got to the books, but this is such a huge part of the books that getting more feels better to me. Like you might as well build it up and make it even bigger and draw it out a little bit longer because I think if you ask a lot of people what some of their most pivotal favorite parts of the books are, this trip through Rhuidean would probably be up there with a lot of people. And so I can imagine it was a lot of pressure on them to not only get it right, but get it, book accurate, but also make it visually interesting and also spend enough time with it that it feels like there's payoff there. Because if it was just 10 minutes or, something real quick, it probably wouldn't have that same depth.
Oh, I agree. I don't think it would have had the same like impression that it leaves
Yeah.
because with how they did it, like you definitely get the impression of how important and pivotal this is, especially for Rand's story.
Yeah. I was surprised to actually see the death of his mother again. Like there was a little clip in the trailer, so I knew that was going to happen, but it's still kind of like a surprise to get that moment and see it again from the perspective of Rand's father. And we learned that Rand's father is actually his birth father. Yeah, biological father is actually the one who killed Moraine's uncle. He's like, I did it. I killed him. And then he's, weeping, holding her body. But this next scene that came after it, where I think the name was Mendane. What was so cool about that is like this was the first. So this scene with Mendane is essentially like the first generation of our current day Aiel
Yeah.
after the oaths had been broken. And there was one teeny tiny little aspect of it that I was just like, that's so cool that they did that. So not only are the visuals great, like having Latra inside Rhuidean and telling the chiefs, this whole information about, instructions on how to use the ter'angreal inside, the glass columns and the arches, but she's also like building them as we're watching it, and that was really cool to see. But just these characters of Mendane and his wife, the costuming department did a really cool thing, and they put these little shells as a part of their costuming. So they had these little tiny shells kind of beaded on their outfits. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, that makes total sense because now they're in the desert, but at this generation, they would still somewhat probably remember parts of their past, when the split happened. And so that the shells would almost be like a reminder of a time when water was abundant. And so, like, now they're living in the desert, but they're still kind of holding on to the past that way. And Latra is telling them about why she's building the columns and to never forget who they are. That way, all generations, all the later generations will remember that they are oath breakers. And yeah, it was so many little like things tucked in there that I really liked.
Well, it also gives a lot of like perspective as to why the Aiel really respect the Tuatha, because like by going into the trial of Rhuidean, they have to learn that the way of the leaf is the Aiel way.
Yeah, or it was the Aiel way.
It's the like the true original Aiel way, and even though that may not be a part of them anymore, paying homage and respect to it is still really critical for them.
Yeah, I think even the fourth scene that we got him going back, where he's kind of like a grandfatherly Tuatha man, Jonai. So he's this like grandfatherly tinker Aiel, and they're watching. It's him and his grandson, and they see all of these deaths, all of their people that have been slaughtered, and we still learn that they are still dragging these Aviendha cuttings. There's a point in this story where we learn that a lot of these cuttings just don't make it. And a lot of these people that promised that they would do this duty and take these tree cuttings to Rhuidean, to the desert, a lot of them just were like, all right, screw this, we're out. But Rand's ancestor, Jonai, was like, no, I'm dedicated. We will do this. And he's pulling this wagon with his bare hands, no horse. And I'm just like, dang.
Well, if you
Like,
think about
it's,
it, look at even how the wagons have changed over time.
yeah, because in the background of that scene, you can still see the more like steampunk wagons, but they're like
Painted.
falling apart. Yeah,
Yeah, I saw that the steampunk wagons were still there, but they had been like painted and these remnants of the Age of Legends still there.
I cannot wait to learn more about the making of all of these moments because visually there's so much to kind of piece together and focus on. But even like the inside of the wagon with the tree inside, when we're talking about like the more steampunk wagons, it's like a little grow house, you know? Like, it's got like it almost looks like what you would put your tomatoes in, like if you're starting
Yeah.
If you're starting seeds from earlier, like in the year where it's still too cold, where it's all insulated, it just, I don't know.
It looked like a little bank vault.
Yeah, yeah. It was very cool. It was very cool.
What did you think of Rand waiting for Moraine?
So when we got the teaser trailer, I want to say, I think there was a scene of him carrying her. In the books, it's actually Lan who does it,
Okay.
but Lan has been sitting there waiting. I really appreciate in the show Rand finding her, waiting for her under the Aviendha, and him waiting for Moraine feels like, even though they might not be on the same page, and Moraine is really testing the limits of their connection, that Rand is very open to making things work, and he's still not holding that over her head as much as he could. Like, he's still a good person. Just because he might not fully trust her, he's still very dedicated to making sure that she walks out alive, or at least being there until time runs out to tell the others and break the news and not just walk out alone. I felt like that was really meaningful for their characters and the relationship and where their story is going to go after this. Because, like you said, the episode begins with such a schism between the two. So hopefully, this ending means that we're going to see them work together, or at least Moraine kind of let go a little bit of this controllingness. But
Yeah, because everything's going to change now.
yeah,
Everything already changed at Foam. Like, I think we heard this in one of the recent previous episodes where Moraine was able to, like, basically control everything up until he declared himself in Foam and everybody now knows about him and she can't control the whole world. And now he's in this journey with the Aiel and it's something that she's not only unfamiliar with, but again, can't control.
yeah, there's a lot left up in the air at the end of this episode. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap it up?
No, I think we really kind of covered everything.
Okay. The only thing that I want to touch on that we didn't talk about is that there is this small scene between Rand and Aviendha before she exits Rhuidean. So his visions end. He's got the two dragon tattoos, so twice he will be marked. Rand finds Aviendha and she sees the tattoos and she is not happy about it. But he says, I now understand, the sword thing, why the Aiel don't use a sword, why they use a spear, because in one of his visions, it was Luwin, the one whose sister was abducted. He kills that man with a spear, and then when he walks off, he says, we won't use a sword, but a spear is something that you can put food into a pot. And also in that same scene with Luwin, he tells the other two men that he's with, he's like, put your veils up so they don't see your face. And if we go to the Aiel culture, we've had a couple of fight scenes with Aviendha. They put their veils up over the bottom half of their face before they're about to kill. And that's where that came from. And so Rand is discovering all of this stuff about the culture just through being in the glass columns. But the last thing that he says to Aviendha is basically, I understand now, but I understand that I don't fully understand. And the more I learn, the less or the more I realize I actually don't know. And so I felt like that was a really fitting little conversation between the two.
It was, definitely. It'll be interesting to see how her feelings about this evolve.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll see.
I don't know if, like, she's kind of feeling like, like she's almost blaming him right now, that it's his
Hmm.
fault that she finally had to do this. He was, in the way that he was, like, really willing to go to the Aiel waste.
Yeah, not only was he willing, he went through this whole test, and he really needs these people. So like he didn't back out. He went through it. Also, another before, I swear to God, this is the last thing before we wrap it up. before Moraine goes in and they're like no weapons inside Rhuidean and she's like emptying like every boot
That
buckle
was
to
very
like
on brand for
pro
her.
producing a new knife. It was good. But yeah, I will wrap it up there. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them into the comment section. Also, please like this episode and subscribe to the channel if you would like to find more of my Wheel of Time videos. Also, you can find me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Discord. And if you would like to help support the channel, check out Road to Tarvalon on Patreon or YouTube memberships. That's it for today, and we will see you back next time.